control the vertigo.
Welcome to Anthologic, the TV anthology podcast. I am your host, Mark. Anthologic is a podcast dedicated to exploring the good, the bad, and the odd of horror, science fiction, and the best of mystery suspense anthology shows and series on TV. Join me as we slip through the cracks of reality to approach the extremes of experience, where we can peruse the stories and art of a sinister fairground of strange and wonderful rides. And now we go on to the show that is the focus of this particular episode. Welcome to this episode of Anthologic with your host Mark. Tonight we'll be talking about Night Gallery. This is Season 2, Episode 8. First aired on the 10th of November 1971. 4 stories with some quite big names. Surprisingly big names. I was quite surprised. Now, this the first story in the 4 is called The Diary, written by Rod Serling. Rod Serling's only contribution to the ones tonight, apart from his presentation in showing some of the pictures and his intros. Interested, directed by a chap called William Howe and starring Virginia Mayo. Virginia Mayo was a big star, back in, I think, the 50s, possibly the 40s, and she's sort of older here. She does a good job, and Patty Duke is the other one. It's kind of a two-hander. There are other people involved with those two. Patty Duke doesn't give such a great performance. She's kind of a bit histrionic, and it's kind of, you can see the acting. Let's put it that way. And interestingly, as a minor character near the end, playing a nurse, is Lindsay Wagner. Also pops up. And it's kind of interesting to see her. This was, I would say, 7 years before she became the Bionic Woman. So she's fairly a bit younger. Looks very much the same though, actually. So, this one involves an aging actress who's been bad-mouthed by this sort of critic, this critic of Hollywood, but bad-mouthed in something she did. I think she was drunk and driving, something like that, or being pulled over by the police while slightly intoxicated. So it's really gossip columnist, and this woman is not very nice. Let's put it that way. She lets. She doesn't want to see anyone, but the aging actress turns up at a party. She kind of talks the man downstairs into letting her up for old time's sake, because she just wants to wish this woman a sort of success or happy birthday or something. Anyway, she goes up and gives her a present while the woman is bad-mouthing her in front of everyone at the party, and it turns out it's a book. And it turns out this book is a diary, which starts to, it peculiarly has the handwriting of the Patty Duke's character, but kind of ahead of time the next day, and it's kind of predicting things that happen. Like, for example, they start reading, these suicides are tragic. I guess she couldn't deal with it. And it's like, what? She goes, I didn't write that, but it's my handwriting. Then we find out this aging actress has killed herself outside the building. So it's kind of, that's weird. And as the story unfolds, I'm going to do spoilers for all of these stories, by the way. As the story unfolds, she starts to become scared of what this diary will predict. For example, it predicts that about half this guy that she's attached to, and there's a hint that she's kind of she keeps stealing other women's men as well, will die, and she doesn't know what to do, and she kind of acts on this even though he's out of town, and it turns out his return prompted by her concern. He gets in a road accident on the way back, so if she'd have never said anything, he would not have died, is the implication. So it's her actions that are causing it. And it kind of unfolds, and she's talking to a psychiatrist, and she kind of tells the psychiatrist what the diagnosis might be. You know, that her unconscious mind is writing this diary and afterwards, and then she kind of pretends that she hasn't written it, or thinks she hasn't written it, and in the end, she gets put into a sort of mental institution where she's demanding from the nurse, who's Lindsay Wagner, she'd be given a pencil so she can fill in the next day, and therefore she's terrified. Oh yeah, what happens is she opens the diary and a page the next day is not filled in, so she thinks she's going to die. So she gets this idea that as long as she can write in her diary, she will not die. And she's demanding a pencil, and the nurse doesn't know what to do. The doctor says, "Oh, sorry, you're new here, you wouldn't know." Yeah, she's we've had her in here for quite a while. And then we find out she's been in there for 5 years. So we don't know how much of this is a fever dream, a sign of madness, or something. It's a little unresolved and not the best served delivered story, really. And as I say, Patty Duke is a bit histrionic in this, and it doesn't quite pull it off. Quite like Virginia Mayo's kind of interested here, and everyone else did a decent job, and it was okay. That's as best as I could put it. The next story is a nice short punchy one, written by Gene Kearney, though it has the feel of a Jack Laird sort of short comedy, actually. So it's, and you can kind of see it coming. You really can. Now, this stars Cesar Romero and an actress called E.J. Pica, and I think a few other people's, but written by Gene Kearney, as I say, and directed by Jack Laird. Now, one interesting aside is the actress who worked on it, E.J. Pica, says she remembers the director being Steven Spielberg, but I mean, whatever the case, Jack Laird is credited as the director. It could have been Spielberg stepped in. It's a short one, so I'm sure it was probably half a day's work at tops. Cesar Romero turns up at a blood bank and announces he's Count Dracula, and the woman starts to talk. Oh, it's very important, you know, a pint is very generous. And he says, no, I was thinking of 3 pints. He goes, no, we can't possibly take that. And it's kind of, oh no, you got the wrong end of the stick, I want to make a load. So Dracula's turned up to get blood. That's the joke, right? That's the joke. And it kind of ends there when she sees his teeth. She notices he's got the vampire teeth. Yeah, okay, fine. Memorable. I do remember them watching this one many years ago, and it was kind of okay then, and it's kind of okay now. So, you know, not particularly effective, I don't think. The next one is called Big Surprise. This was written by Richard Matheson. How about that? Richard Matheson, and directed by Jeno Schwartz. Now, I'm not quite sure I'm pronouncing that name correctly, so I apologise. Now, he does have several contributions in that gallery, and they're usually pretty solid. And this one wasn't bad. He's using directorial flourishes of music and sort of scene setting to try and build the atmosphere, and it's kind of okay. Now, basically, there's these boys hanging around, 3 boys, and one gets beckoned to by an old man who's John Carradine, who just says to one, if you go to this place and dig down 4 feet, you're going to get a big surprise. Like treasure or something like that. I should say it's not. I don't think the teleplay was written by Richard Matheson. It's based on a short story of the same title by Richard Matheson. From the look of it, I don't know. The screenplay is not entirely clear. So this old man, John Carradine, sort of hints at something to this boy, and he tells his friends. One of them's pretty doubting, but they all turn up with shovels and start digging straight down where they were told to. But once I get to 4 feet, the boys are like, "Yeah, he's laughing at you. This is silly." 2 of them anyway, and one of them is kind of, "No, we should keep digging. I don't think it is 4 feet." And the other 2 clear off. Meanwhile, the other boy carries on digging, and they pad the time with him sort of talking to himself, saying, "I'll show them when I'm not going to share when I find it." And he keeps digging, and finally he hits something. He uncovers it, and it's like it could be a doorway or a sort of hatch or a box. It's unclear. And anyway, it opens. Something emerges. We see the boy sort of stagger back in horror. And it's John Carradine there, and he goes, surprise! And then the story ends. Yeah, it was okay. It was interesting to see what was going to happen, because it wasn't entirely clear what was going to pop out of this box. But yeah, it was okay. Yeah, okay, so the last one was written by Jack Laird. So this one has got Jack Laird's fingerprints on, and directed by Gerald Freeman. Mostly carried by Carl Reiner as the titular Professor Peabody, and the story is called Professor Peabody's Last Lecture, where a professor is given a lecture on ancient cults. He's basically uncovered these arcane books that have never been exposed or never, so he can discuss them. And there's a very, very strong Lovecraft element to this. In fact, one of the students is called Mr. Lovecraft, and one is called Mr. Derleth. I guess after August Derleth, who went on to continue writing things about H.P. Lovecraft's mythos. And we get Cthulhu mentioned, we get Yog-Sothoth written on the board mentioned, and so on. And he's talking about the elder gods. And as the lecture goes on, the lightning and the weather get worse and worse and worse, and it's kind of horrible outside. And this goes on for quite some time. I quite liked it. It built. Now, I've seen other reviews where they say, oh man, this could have been a 2-minute one. I kind of get that, but I kind of like this, and Carl Reiner gave a good performance here, and it filled its time well. And he was just, and in fact, at several points, the students stood up and sort of suggested he might want to stop because of the issues that are supposed to get, not a curse, but the threat to anyone who continues along this line and reads this book. But he just continues and continues and continues, and then finally there's kind of a sort of lightning strike, and something happens as he gets to the end of the lecture, and he changes, and you can see the faces of his students sort of reel back, and he's kind of also like a weird swamp creature with one eye, sort of protruding eye, or a big eye without an eyelid looking at them. And they're kind of like, obviously he's brought this on himself, and then it finally ends where he says, "Any questions?" And then it ends. I quite like this. This one is the most memorable one, I think. No, I think we'll all remember Count Dracula, as Cesar Romero once seen. So of the four, I actually like Professor Peabody's Last Lecture the best. It was goofy and silly, but I kind of liked it, and Carl Reiner really delivered it. And the students who are sort of interrupted in and asking questions were kind of a lot of fun. So, not a great episode overall, I have to say. It packs in 4 stories of varying lengths, and it's fine. I think the weakest one for me was probably the diary, actually. It was a bit contrived, and you can kind of see it coming. Whereas the rest at least had something about them that entertained. But overall, I'd say this was a fairly weak episode. So that's it from me. But before I go, may I ask, is anybody out there?
I'm not.
We now return control of your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to